Donald Trump is promising to reveal really big news in a speech tonight to the United States. It's the first of a series of primetime addresses by the president, whose approval ratings currently hover around 30%. Trump has promised that topics will include election security and what he's described as a couple of other things. I mean, that just could mean the end of the world as we know it. Steve Erlanger is the New York Times chief diplomatic correspondent in Europe. Stephen, a very good afternoon from us. What are you anticipating? What on earth could be in the category described as a couple of other things?
Well, that could be sharks. It could be the dangers of electrical boats. It could be the dangers of migration. It could be lots of things. But no, Trump is looking at the midterms, and he knows he and his party are in trouble. The Republican Party has been working for a long time, because it is basically a minority party, to restrict voting. It's putting up as much as possible in different states barriers to easy voting. It doesn't like online voting. It doesn't like mail-in ballots. It doesn't like voting in advance. But states pretty much run their own elections. So I'm very curious. I suspect he's going to be talking about security, about voting. I'm not sure what the federal government can actually do about it, but will people have to bring more identity to the polls? Will there be more poll watchers? I really don't know what he has in mind, but I think I have a pretty good idea of the intent of it, which is to make voting by minorities, particularly poor people, people in the South, people who would tend to vote Democratic, to make their ability to vote a little less simple.
Is it unusual for him to announce that he's going to give a series of presidential addresses? We originally thought this was at 9 o'clock in the morning, which didn't seem to be a time that was usually used for White House comms, but it's 9 o'clock in the evening, isn't it? Is that unusual?
Well, I mean, it's usually that sort of thing is reserved for big announcements, which is why one actually wonders. Then, of course, the main networks, which are obviously less important now than they used to be, have to decide whether to televise such a speech live, and break into their more profitable programming. But it tends to be reserved for bigger events. Trump is hardly a quiet president. He's talking all the time. So clearly there's something important he feels that he wants to say. I'm sure he'll talk about the Iran war. I imagine he'll talk about NATO. He might talk about Ukraine. He's probably going to talk about, as I said, the dangers of, the border and of illegal aliens voting and fraudulent voting patterns and so on, which are highly exaggerated. I mean, when you look at all the political studies all across the United States, the amount of voting fraud is really quite tiny, but it's become an obsession with the Republican Party and with Trump. People are also very worried about intimidation. I mean, these agents called ICE agents, which are customs and border control agents, if they set up outside voting booths to check people's documents, this could be also considered a kind of disincentive of people whose papers aren't quite in perfect order. So he could announce things like that. It's hard to know, but as I say, it's not going to promote easy voting.
Sure. And Stephen, how wise do you think it is for a president whose popularity is so low to give speeches that may have this content in them? I mean, in a sense, would he do better politically to stay quieter on these issues?
I don't think you could keep Trump quiet unless you drugged him, and even then, I'm not sure. I mean, no, there are certain obsessions that he has, and of course, the point of the midterms is there are key states, and there are key states that are up in the air, and the rest of the country doesn't actually matter. I mean, all of the representatives are up for re-election, but almost all of them get re-elected anyway, and a third of the Senate is up. So the Democrats think they can take back the House, even by a relatively small margin, which would be important because right now the Republicans run the presidency and both houses. So to even get one house back could put a big, wrench into the president's plans. But there are some Democrats who think they might be able to get the Senate as well, which, and the Senate has to approve judicial nominations and ambassadorial nominations and many other crucial things. And of course, it's all about the budget. I mean, Congress controls the budget. So who controls the Congress really is crucial. And so that's why the stakes, I think, are really quite high. I mean, it's hard to imagine Trump staying on script for very long, but we'll have to see. I mean, he's also can be, as you know, very entertaining, particularly when he decides to go off script. But these days, it's just harder to know what's going to cross his mind. It could be Mount Rushmore. It could be the beautiful East Wing that he wants to build. It could be his view on architecture. It could be almost anything.
It certainly could be, yep. Can we talk about some other topics as well? President Zelensky has just sacked most of his cabinet, including a very popular defence minister. Do you have any greater insight into why he has done this?
One wants to be careful here, but Ukraine still has corruption problems. Ukraine still has crony problems. One of his chief aides is on trial. Andrei Yermak, who was considered his consigliere, is on trial for corruption and influence peddling. And this young defense minister, who'd only been in the job, I think, 6 months, had made a point of trying to go to different kinds of companies that had less traditional ties to the government. This is why you're seeing protests. People aren't protesting because the prime minister's been changed. They're protesting because they feel that, after all, they're at war. And they fear there's a kind of cronyism going on that doesn't help the defense of the country. Now, Zelensky, he's still popular in the sense that he's the president of an embattled country, and he's been very brave. But as long as there's a war going on, there are no new elections. So he's been in power a really long time without any voting. And I think, lots of people, as happens everywhere, are just a bit sick of him and his government and his choices and the potential, at least, for corruption.
Yeah. Keir Starmer is in Ukraine today, reassuring Zelensky of Britain's ongoing support with the change in leadership here. What do you think it means for Ukraine and its allies? I mean, Andy Burnham is untried on a world stage, but that's often the case for an incoming prime minister, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and often for an incoming American president, too, like Jimmy Carter, for instance, many of them. I mean, there's just no ability to get ready for a job like that, for the pressures of a job like that. I mean, it's being a vice president in America doesn't really prepare you either. So, I'm hopeful that Britain will retain its support for Ukraine. Britain's been, ever since Boris Johnson, has been very strong in defending Ukraine's right to keep its sovereignty. It's tried to help as best as possible. I mean, obviously, Britain has money issues, and there's a whole issue you don't need to hear me talk about, the defense review and how it's all going to get paid for. But in diplomatic terms, Britain and France share the Ukraine Contact Group, which has to do with supplying Ukraine with with arms. Britain contributes money. It's playing a very important role, and it's very much appreciated inside Ukraine. So I don't know what Andy Burnham's foreign policy thinking is, but I hope he stays the course on this issue and on NATO.
Stephen, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time this afternoon. Steven Erlanger is the New York Times chief diplomatic correspondent in Europe.